Welcome back to Harsh Rules. I'm Ben Harsh, and today we're going to learn to play the first volume of the fast action battle game series, The Bulge. FAB, The Bulge, was released in 2008 by G&T Games and designed by Rick Young. This game supports up to 2 players and takes about 4 hours to play. Before we begin this episode, I'd like to recognize the Harsh Rules Patreon supporters that help make content like this possible. If you'd like to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/harshrules to learn more. And once again, thank you for your support. Another way you can support the channel is by liking and subscribing. Liking a video helps me understand what content is successful with this audience. As for subscribing, new content appears on this channel first. While you may have found your way here from Board Game Geek or other sites, in the future I'll also be adding more exclusive content that may only be found here. The best way to be informed when I upload new videos is to subscribe and click the bell icon for notifications. Once again, thanks for watching, and now let's get to the video. The Bulge is the first entry in GMT's Fast Action Battle Game series, or FAB for short. The advantage of the FAB series is that each volume adheres to a series rulebook. Once players learn the rules, they can apply them to any other volume in the series. There is also a playbook that provides volume-specific rules and scenarios. For example, the first volume is focused on the Battle of the Bulge. The playbook addresses rules related to this campaign. Most of the FAB series is focused on World War II, with the sole exception of Volume 3, which takes a huge departure to explore the Arab-Israeli War of 1973. The biggest question players will have with this game: are they really fast? While a game can take 4 hours to play, the F for fast in FAB is in reference to the streamlined game mechanics. This leads to faster gameplay as opposed to game length. In this episode, we're going to take a closer look at those rules to understand how fast action battles work. This is the first volume of GMT's Fast Action Battle Game series, The Bulge. This block war game takes place during the Second World War and recreates the Battle of the Bulge from December 16, 1944 to January 25, 1945. This was a major German offensive on the Western Front in the forested Ardennes region of Belgium and Luxembourg. The Germans' objective was to stop the Allied use of the Belgian port of Antwerp and split the Allied lines. They believed this would force the Americans and British to settle for peace and break their alliance with the Soviet Union. At the beginning of the game, the German players' forces, represented by gray blocks, will drive into the US players' front line of green blocks. You can already see the start of the famous bulge in the American line that the battle gets its name from. Players will continue the battle and see if they fare better than their historic counterparts. In actual World War II history, the extent of Germany's progress west looks something like this. The farthest point the Germans were able to reach was less than 10 kilometers from the Mura River, but still over 100 kilometers from Antwerp. In fact, it was so far, Antwerp is not included on this map. Therefore, in the Bulge, players instead earn victory points by securing objective areas. These are identified by areas with specific symbol types. If the German player holds an area with a white star, they earn a victory point for each star in the area. If the US player captures an area with an iron cross, they earn a victory point for each. Areas with a yellow star award either player a victory point for holding them. After turn 4, earned victory points are compared against a net victory point threshold for that turn. If a player earns equal to or greater than the turn's listed victory points, they win a sudden death victory. Otherwise, they proceed to the next turn. Players also receive a victory point for destroying large units. Large units are blocks with 3 or more steps. Once defeated, they are placed on the eliminated large unit track. Getting the game ready to play is pretty straightforward. Setup information for the campaign scenario can be found on page 22 of the playbook. The bottom of the page has tables for each side listing the required blocks and markers for setup. The game's map is divided into territories called areas. Each area has its own number. The required setup blocks and markers are printed out in the required areas. Also, starting blocks have a white space in their corner with a number. These numbers correspond to the area they should be placed in for setup. The setup tables also refer to specific markers. I'm showing them here so you'll have a visual reference. As for the track side of the board, there is very little to set up at the beginning of the game. Most spaces that require setup show the exact counters needed for placement. Finally, you will need to place the game turn marker with the gray side showing up for Germany, who takes their turn first, on space 1 of the turn track, and the VP marker on space 0 of the general information track. To expedite gameplay, you also may want to stack all the reinforcements on each player's reinforcement cards. And that's all there really is to it. Next, let's familiarize ourselves with all the major components in the game. Each side's higher echelons are assigned specific colors to organize their game pieces on the board. As for game pieces, there are two types: units, identified by wooden blocks, and supporting assets represented by cardboard counters, such as artillery units, smaller fighting forces, and engineers. First of all, since this is a block war game, when placing units on the game board, the stickered side of a block with the unit information faces the player, and the blank reverse side faces their opponent. This creates a fog of war, where each player is unsure of their opponent's strength. When combat occurs, the strength of both sides will be revealed. Now, let's review the layout of a unit block. The military symbol at the center of the block determines its class. While there are several special designations, such as airborne and armored cavalry, the game's rules manage all units at their primary designation. A block can either be an infantry unit or an armor unit. A unit's historical designation is shown in the lower right-hand corner. The upper left-hand corner of the block shows the unit's starting area in the game. A unit's current strength is determined by the number of pips displayed at the top of the block. The number of pips equal the unit's health and the number of dice that can be rolled for it in combat. When a unit suffers damage, the block is rotated counterclockwise to decrease its pips. This is known as a step loss. When a unit suffers enough step losses that it no longer has pips, then the unit is eliminated. You'll also notice that units have different colors of pips. Pip color indicates the unit's overall troop quality. Red pips mean that the unit is functioning at an elite level. Black, a veteran level. And a white pip means the unit is operating at a green or inexperienced level. When a unit suffers step losses, this often affects troop quality. Elite multi-pip units that suffer losses often regress to veteran level. However, green units that suffer losses gain experience and may develop into veterans. Troop quality becomes important when units engage in combat. Differences in troop quality modify the success number required to score a hit. In FAB games, all die results are conducted with a 10-sided die. The base success number is a 5. Therefore, a die result of 1 through 5 is a success, and a 6 through 10 is a failure. When there is a difference in troop quality between units in combat, the success number shifts. For example, a veteran unit targeting a green unit adds 2 to the success number. Therefore, the veteran unit can hit the green unit on a die result of 1 through 7, but misses on an 8 through 10. When the roles are reversed, the green unit receives a -2 to the success number. Therefore, they can only hit the veteran unit on a die result of 1 through 3 and miss on a 7 through 10. We'll cover combat in a later episode in this series, but that's the foundation of how the dice mechanics work. While on the subject of strength, it's important to note that some assets, represented by cardboard counters, also have pips. However, they usually only have one step level and will be eliminated if they are hit. Next, let's take a closer look at assets. Most assets become available to a player during their reinforcement phase. The turn an asset becomes available is shown in the upper left-hand corner of the counter. If there is an S there instead, it means the counter is available at the start of the game. Assets generally fall into two groups: artillery assets and battle assets. Artillery assets, like standard artillery deployed by both sides, and rocket artillery used specifically by the Germans. Artillery units fire first during combat, and each allow a player to roll one die. Battle assets are typically small fighting formations and engineers. While artillery assets are spent and then removed, battle assets have a single step of health. They fight alongside units in the ground fire stage of combat. Much like units, battle assets have their class and historical designation printed on the counter. The Bulge also includes several historical-themed events that add additional effects to gameplay. There are individual events for the German and Allied player, as well as event types available to both players. German events provide opportunities for German saboteurs to block Allied activities or make it harder for them to blow bridges. There are also opportunities for special reinforcements, and later in the game, when the weather improves, conduct airstrikes to try and prevent Allied air missions. The Allied events focus on repairing steps of health to units or returning some units from the eliminated box. Later in the game, the Allies may also conduct air missions to provide combat support, delay German movement, and conduct supply missions. Finally, both players have access to events that allow units to repair one step of health and conduct a variety of special actions. There are also dud counters that waste one of the player's selection cup draws. And now that we've covered an overview of the campaign and familiarized ourselves with the main game pieces, we're ready to tackle the sequence of play, which will be the next episode in this series. So be sure you're subscribed and keep your eyes on your notifications for the next episode. If you found this video helpful, please give me a like and share with your friends. To be the first notified when the next episode of Harsh Rules becomes available, please hit the bell icon for notifications. And as always, this has been Harsh for Harsh Rules. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.